Broadcasting live from the SHRM 2021 conference at the Las Vegas Convention Center, it's time for Workplace MVP, brought to you by R3 Continuum, a global leader in workplace behavioral health, crisis, and security solutions. Now, here's your host.
Hello, everyone. Jamie Gassman, your host of Workplace MVP, and we are broadcasting from the SHRM 2021 conference in Las Vegas, Nevada. And with me today is Tammy Worley from Adare Pharmaceuticals. Tammy is the Senior HR Manager for the U.S. region. Welcome to the show, Tammy.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So, Tammy, tell me a little bit about your career journey and how you came to be the Senior HR Manager for Adare Pharmaceuticals.
Wow, what a journey. I started out in a manufacturing company that was a glass factory, and I was asked to volunteer to help to rewrite an employee handbook. And from there, I fell in love with HR, and I have been in it since 1996.
Wow. Interesting. So all from being volunteered to write an HR handbook. Fantastic. Yep. How did you navigate that task?
It was a lot of work, a lot of talking to people, a lot of typing, because back then we did not have word processors like we have today. So there was a lot of manual typing, and it was communicating with a lot of people and having to collaborate with different groups. And I found that when I was a child, I wanted to be a teacher, and this started that journey where I could be a customer service person without having to be a teacher of young children. And I also at one point wanted to be in adult care, and I knew that from my wearing my heart on my sleeve that I wasn't going to be probably good in that arena. And when I volunteered in HR, it just was like, I think I found my home.
It's amazing. Well, and it definitely brings those two kind of passions that you had as a child into one career opportunity, because HR definitely does that. There's definitely that educational component to it as an HR leader within an organization, and you really have to have that compassion for people too. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, and it was just a way that, if in the adult care of elder care, you're going to be looking at the loss of individuals. Not that I don't see a loss of people, but it's on a different scale. But it's a way for me to connect with people, do all I can to support them. Because I heard it during the session, the general session, is the whole person comes to work. And I heard Chipotle mention that. And that has actually been a belief of mine for as long as I can remember. The whole person comes to work and the whole person goes home. And how can you ask people to differentiate from that? And I can't, because I am the whole person that comes to work and I'm the whole person that goes home. So how can I ask people to be different from me?
Oh, it's a fantastic takeaway. I love that. And it's true. You got to look, it's all of it. It's the physical, it's the psychological, you got to look at that entire person and how you're supporting them. So having that belief and then hearing that in one of the pre-conferences, actually it was the general session, was the opening keynote, is there something that you are taking back that's different than what you might have been doing already, or is it going to enhance some of the things that you maybe have done already in your role?
I think it's an affirmation that what I have believed all along is accurate. I'm a person of the entering the HR arena in the 90s, and that was a whole different world. And Brian spoke about from Chipotle that there was one person who said a new normal. And I agree with him that our new normal changes daily.
Absolutely.
And as an HR professional, how do we recognize that new normal is going to change daily, but we answer to different people who don't necessarily agree that the new normal is daily? I love the fact that he, as a high-level leader within the organization, recognizes that.
Yeah, that's fascinating because, it's a new normal at work daily. It's also a new normal at home daily for some of these employees. So they're bringing that on their sleeve when they're coming into that workplace. They're trying to balance the challenges that they're experiencing on their daily at home with the challenges they face, daily at work. So what a great takeaway. And so, how, from your perspective, if you're going to be looking at like maybe a senior leader in your organization that you're having to kind of talk about that with, how would you approach that?
Well, it's really a cultural difference, right? We went from an autocratic organization. Most organizations are autocratic, right? To more of a demographic, or democracy, if you will. Asking employees, what do you think? What do you feel? Where do you want to see things? Having focus groups. I mean, a lot of organizations were breaking that ground. And other organizations were not jumping onto that bandwagon, right? They were still in this is what we have to do, and we're a very controlled environment, and it's black and white. But now we're in a gray environment, right? Mm-hmm. We have remote workers, and these remote workers want to stay remote. We had to introduce flexible work environments because we have people that are taking care of their children at home. And so that new normal became a different demographics for us. And we had to rethink how we administer policies, how we administer compassion, how we integrate communication, and so it was a divide and conquer, but at the same time thinking about how do we re-engage people, because engagement is important. And I know every pulse survey every company does, it comes out communication. But employees are not asking for us to give us another newsletter. Mm-hmm. They're not asking us to send another email. They're not asking for another video. They're asking for us to bridge the gap from department to department. And they want to bridge that gap of communication. And so when you have remote workers, there's a delay in communication. It's not real time anymore. So we have to figure out how to engage the employees to recognize that if you're asking for email, you're asking for Teams meetings or Skype meetings or whatever the case may be, that we're no longer asking employees, send me an IM. Let's open up the door to give me a call. Mm-hmm. And have a real life conversation, because I think email has become the norm, communication, and there's something lost in that. Because I know from my own personal experience, I send an email, I can be short and sweet, and then the person, it reads that, and then they interpret something different than the message I wanted to present. If we had just picked up the phone and called that person, or said, let me call you on Teams or IM or Skype, we could have eliminated all of that confusion. But I think that the bridge is communicating interdepartmentally, and silos have been built, and we've got to get the silos back down.
Oh, I think that's such a great point. I always say things are lost in translation in email. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, people are they're burned out, they're stressed, and they're getting a lot of email from a lot of different sources. And so I would agree with you. Like, they're probably skinning it, mm-hmm. not really reading it. And it's kind of like when you hear like communication with when you talk and listen to someone, like that active listening skill. It's almost like you have to have active reading skills. And and when you've got so many things coming at you, I could see where some of those employees are struggling with that, which does create kind of some divides because, and those silos are hard to break down once they're formed.
Yes, and we have, in the past, you could just get up from your chair and go to the other office and talk to the person if you were not understanding. We can't do that so much today, right?
Yeah, right.
Because their office is at their home where the dog is barking, the cat's walking across their keyboard, or the child is crying in the background. And so we need to remember that.
Wow. That sounded like a school bell here. Speaking of interruptions during different, work and events, I'm not sure what that was, but yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot more distractions sometimes with people working from home. So, in your opinion, if an organization is going to, that's a cultural thing, right? And I'm always a firm believer that cultural changes and things of that nature start at the top. And then they kind of just, move their way through the organization. But, and so as leaders, do you think that it has to be like a program implemented, or is it something that you just have to get that buy-in from your executive team or your leaders in kind of saying this is now the expectation culturally that you pick up the phone and you make that phone call?
I think it has to be a top-down.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I find that our executive leadership is leading from an email. And they do town halls, they do the pulse surveys, they do all of that, but it's still disengaged, right? It's not personable. Where's the personable touch to that? So our organization is trying to do more onboarding, calling, welcoming the person to the organization from a one-on-one standpoint, and then asking them, what would you like to see differently? And then we are actively looking to make changes based on that critique. So that feedback is important to us. But I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done from the top down.
Yeah. Interesting. I know I heard one time, from an executive leader that, making rounds on the floor to check in on people just to see how they're doing, like building that into your day. It's almost like you got to find a way to do that virtually, whether it's joining in on a team meeting, that's not a town hall, but like kind of individual department team meetings, just to kind of show that face and let them know that you're there and you care.
Yeah, but when you have an essential workforce, they have to be there day in and day out, right? And then you've identified those people that are not essential to the day-to-day operation. And I almost guarantee you that's been HR folks, customer service folks maybe, finance, and maybe even your individual site leadership people that don't have to be there on a day-to-day basis. How do we get them to re-engage to do, as you're pointed out, to walk on that floor? Because I'm sorry, I can take my phone out there and I can video. That's not the same.
No.
It's not an engagement activity.
Right.
So we have to get them back to the workforce and realize that their presence is as key to every essential employee to be there. Because for me, even when I was told I was not an essential employee, I still came to the site almost every day. Why? Because I'm HR. My title is Human Resource Manager. How can I take the human out of the resource?
Yeah.
And so I still came to the site because they needed to know that I cared enough to be there, that you had to expose yourself every day to be there on site. I had to be there too, because you have questions. And how am I supposed to answer those questions remotely from an email? Send me an email. For employees that are still using flip phones and don't understand the email system. Yeah. So I came on site because I felt like it was my job to still include the human in the resource that we provide, because are we not a customer service?
Yeah, and absolutely, like an internal customer service. Love that point of you're the human in the resource. That's fantastic. So now I know this is your first SHRM that you've attended?
Yes.
So far, obviously, it sounds like you're getting some great pointers from the presentations. So are there any other topics or exciting presentations you're looking forward to attending over the next few days?
The Michael Phelps is really interesting to me. A couple of years ago, I really wanted Adare to change their EAP benefits, and we promoted a new EAP benefit plan, and I have noticed over the last year we had more utilization of that. And it's a big, passionate part of being a human resource department, is providing that resource. And I knew a couple of years ago, well, actually, I'd say almost 5 years ago, I had an employee who lost their spouse. And she went to use our EAP benefits, and she struggled finding a counselor. That was not acceptable to me because she needed real-time assistance, right? And our plan that we had in place at that time was what we want to call a, quote, free benefit. But it didn't provide real benefit, real-time benefit. And so I promoted and we utilized putting in a real-life live online help that they can get immediately for EAP benefits. And I have noticed an increase in the utilization of our benefits, not just from our employees, but their families. And we opened up that door to our EAP benefits to being anyone living in the household. So we know that in this modern day, it's not just your spouse, you as an employee, and your children, but you might have a grandchild living with you, you might have a grandparent living with you, you might have parents living with you, and they may need help too. And so for me, an EAP benefit isn't just about acknowledging our employee, but acknowledging their home and who might need help in that home.
Yeah, going back to that whole person you mentioned earlier in the conversation.
Yes.
Great pointers, great information. Well, I hope you get some wonderful sessions that you take some more great content from. And just really want to thank you for being on our show today and appreciate you stopping by the booth. For all those listeners listening in, we are at booth 4076 here in the SHRM conference. It's R3 Continuum's booth, our show sponsor. And, thank you again.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
the show.
I have enjoyed it, and I hope that somebody will take something away from this too.
Wonderful. Appreciate it.
Thank you.